Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Columbia Public Library. We are glad that you are here. And also, I want to start right off by saying thank you to the League of Women Voters for doing these organized events like this. And they've done it for a long time. And I'm very appreciative of the fact that they are helping us to understand our roles as voters and also as members of this community through these forums that they have done regularly. And a special thanks also to the Columbia Public Library, League of Women Voters, and the library. Both welcome you to tonight's in-person, and this is broadcast on Zoom, and it's also on radio stations KFRU and KOPN. They're airing the forum tonight also. This forum will include candidates for the Columbia School Board and the Columbia City Council Ward 5 and Columbia and Boone County ballot issues. Those will be presented at the end of our evening together. Pat Fowler ended her campaign for Ward 1, and Nick Kanoth is the only remaining candidate there. And so the League of Women Voters, since that is an uncontested race, we will not have a Ward 1 representation here tonight. If Nick is here, and I don't think he's here yet. All right, he's here after 7 from the voice in the back. So you'll have a chance to meet him and talk to him if you care to about Ward 1 issues as he is here and as we wrap up the evening. My name is David Lyle. I'm pleased and honored to be asked to be a part of this. And thanks to Lauren Williams, also at the Columbia Public Library, for hosting this forum. So here's what's going to be happening. Our first part of the forum is going to include the candidates for the Columbia School Board. The school board has 7 members. The Missouri School Board Association provides the following information on candidate qualifications and then the role of a school board member. And so with the league's help, I'll read those. So they provided this information. The Board of Education is a volunteer representative body elected by the registered voters of the local public school district. Candidates must be a U.S. citizen, resident taxpayer of the district, resident of Missouri for at least 1 year, and at least 24 years old, must be current on state and local taxes and not be registered or required to register as a sex offender. The school board governs the school district and provides leadership and advocacy for public education. School boards are charged with making decisions in the best interest of the entire district, and specifically, these are the actions of the board. Establishes the goal and vision of the district with input from the community and evaluates the results. Develops and approves rules to help schools cooperate for student success. And the only person hired and evaluated by the board is the superintendent. The board approves the budget proposed by the superintendent and ensures funding supports district goals. And the board shares district information with local legislators and the community to secure resources necessary for student success. Those of you who've been to these forums in the past, we're going to be doing the school board portion a little bit different than what we've done in the past. With 7 candidates, it gets kind of bulky to have 7 candidates at the front asking a question and going through the whole list. So we're trying something new, and I like the idea a lot. We're going to have each candidate up here by himself or herself, and we will ask questions that have been prepared ahead of time with the League of Women Voters, and they provided those questions to the candidates. And so they have had a chance to look at the questions. And then after they answer the questions that are provided by the league, in which they've already seen, each candidate is going to be asked a unique question from a public high school student. And we'll get to those in a moment. They do not know what those questions are going to be. Following the questions, each candidate will have a time for a 1-minute closing statement. The league has provided audience members with a handout. It's back at the table near that entrance, but this is the handout. And the handout shows you the order of, I'm not quite sure it's going to be exact order of what we have here, but it does give you the questions that the candidates are aware of and will be answering. Let's see, they'll have a 2-minute opening statement. They'll have a 1.5 minutes for each question that is asked, and we'll go from there. So the 7 candidates for the 3 seats on the school board all are Paul Harper, John Potter, Chris Horn, James Gordon, John Lyman, April Farrell, and Chuck Basie. Voters can vote for 3 of the candidates. We ask you to listen respectfully to all of the candidates. Again, we'll not have an opportunity during this particular forum to ask questions from the audience of the school board candidates. So keep that in mind. The league has timers and we'll hold a stop sign when the time is up on a statement or answers or an opening statement. So we welcome Paul Harper up first. He's the first one here. Welcome. And I'm not sure whether your microphone's been unmuted. I hope that it has.
Hello. it on?
Maybe I'll need to do that. Try it again.
Hello? Is it on?
There we go.
Okay.
Right up close to work best for those kinds of microphones. So we'll start with the first question. Well, first of all, we'll start with your opening 2-minute comments that you'd like to make as a starting statement tonight.
Okay, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Paul Harper. I'm the father of 2 daughters. My oldest graduated from Rockbridge in 2020. My youngest graduated from Rockbridge, will graduate from Rockbridge this year in 2023. I've devoted most of my life to public service, first as a special ed teacher, and then as an attorney for the state of Missouri. Part of my work for the state of Missouri for 7.5 years, I was the general counsel for State Auditor Nicole Galloway, and I helped conduct audits and investigations of numerous political subdivisions, including school districts. I believe in the Columbia Public Schools. I sent my children to CPS. I student taught in CPS, and I made my permanent home in Columbia, mostly because of CPS. I believe that we have some hard times ahead, though. We have a teacher shortage nationwide. We have a growing discontent with government, but I believe my experience can help weather that storm. I understand public financing. I have professional experience in ensuring accountability for political subdivision. I want to use my professional experience to help the Columbia Public School. I believe that I'm the right person for the board at this time. Thank you.
All right, thank you. There are 4 questions that were provided ahead of time from the League of Women Voters, and so we'll go through them in the same order for each of the candidates. And this is question number 1. Public schools are required to accept all students with whatever challenges they bring. What are your expectations for making Columbia Public Schools successful for all?
Well, unfortunately, recent reports have shown that we aren't doing the best for all students. And that's not acceptable. As a public school, we should be preparing every student for education for life. The recent special ed report outlines some of what I would expect. Is it not on?
It's on, but it's one of those.
Some of what I would expect to see, including clarifying roles for decision-making for teachers and administrators, greater behavior supports for teachers, and improved core instructions through higher expectations for our students. I feel that oftentimes our district makes ad hoc decisions and doesn't do long-term planning. As a school board member, I want to see that long-term planning. As a school board member, I want the board to tell the superintendent that he needs to make a plan for the school. He needs to publicize that plan for the school, and then the board must hold him to that. It should have benchmarks, and we should regularly be seeing how the school is meeting the benchmarks of the plan that the superintendent has. Thank you.
All right, again, 1.5 minutes allowed for each of the answers to the questions that are the ones that have been provided. So here's question number 2. What do you plan to accomplish most as a school board member?
I've got 3 things I'd like to see happen in, I've got 3 things I'd like to see happen in the years that I will be there. Teacher compensation. Again, we are in a teacher shortage. The only way we can improve and retain and hire teachers is if we increase the pay and increase teacher compensation. We also need to support our teachers through culture and additional supports for the teachers. I believe in transparency and accountability. I'd like to see an accountability portal for the school, very similar to what we have for the state of Missouri. That way you can see the expenses of the school and see exactly how they are spending its money. Right now, it's not easy. Right now, if you look at the agenda for the school board, you will see that there is a line item for expenses, but that PDF is not published with the agenda. I'd like the public to be able to see what expenses the board is spending its money on. And finally, I'd like to see a parent advisory council for special education, a parent-driven board in order to receive concerns and emerging issues from parents Studies have shown that having a parent advisory council that is parent-driven improves outcomes for special education children. And I believe that that special education report shows we need something like that. Thank you.
All right. Third question is, what is the role of a classroom teacher?
We've got great teachers at CPS. The role, of course, for classroom teachers is to teach our children for life. Our teachers know how to do that. What we need to do is we need to give them supports to do that. So I'd like to shift this around a little bit. And what's the role of the school board to support the teachers? The purpose of the board is to make all the rules and regulations for the district. And quite frankly, at that point, the district should also be removing bureaucratic impediments to learning. It's the job of the district to give the educators the infrastructure they need and then to get out of the way so that they can do their work. It is our job to listen to stakeholders. That's everybody in the community. That's parents, teachers, community partners, to ensure that we are doing what we need to for our students. All students deserve a chance to succeed, and I will work with our stakeholders to ensure that the district is helping our children learn.
All right, let's go to our final pre-submitted question. And this is the question. There are efforts in Missouri to ban history topics, teacher speech, and certain books. At the same time, students are being killed by guns in classrooms. What do you think is the most pressing issue facing public schools, and how do you propose to address it?
Well, first, I think all of this talk about banning certain things is really a distraction to the things that really matter to us. If the Missouri legislators were serious, they would be talking about things like fixing the foundation formula, ensuring transportation for all students in Missouri, fixing the broken Hancock formula, and prioritizing pre-K education. Instead, we get bans on any number of things and attacks on various groups in our state. That's not really acceptable. I plan to address these issues by ensuring that all students are included within the learning environment. We need to make sure that all students feel welcome in our schools, whatever they look like, whatever their families look like. I will work to create caring policies to ensure that our children can learn.
Now we have an opportunity. Before we bring up our first high school student, I would like to thank the League of Women Voters Education Committee. They have been the ones working with these high school students and making sure that the students have an opportunity to speak tonight. So let me check. There we go. Like he did, swallow this baby and you'll be able to be heard. So this first student is going to be asking the question for Mr. Harper J. Castello. He is a 16-year-old junior at Rockbridge, and welcome, and we're looking forward to your question.
As state laws restrict students' identity in the classroom are growing, how can Columbia Public Schools support and protect trans students in the classroom and at school?
Well, first, we do need to ensure that all of our students are supported in every way we can. I certainly support the LGBT community. I believe that the district did the right thing with the closed closet. All of these things that the legislature is doing is a distraction to us. They're doing it for media hits, not because it's good policy, not for any other reason. We shouldn't be doing that. We should be caring for our children, not making it harder for them to learn. We all know that children don't learn unless they feel safe in the schools. We need to ensure that our children feel safe in the school, and we should not be doing what the legislature is doing right now to our LGBT community.
Thank you. Appreciate your question and participation. I should have the students stay up here and we could get real honest and say, are you satisfied that your question was answered? So the rest of you, when you come up today, if you say, oh, I wanted something else, or they didn't actually answer my question, we could use you in all of these forums for that purpose. We've gone through our questions. So now you have a minute for a closing comment, Paul Harper.
I want to thank the League of Women Voters. Again, I believe in CPS. I believe in our students. I believe in our teachers. I believe in our community. The school board sets the tone for the district, and I believe that if I'm on the board, I can help set the proper tone. Again, I understand public finance. I believe that I believe that I can help make the district more transparent and accountable to the people. I believe that I can help CPS moving forward through the teacher crisis. And I would just like to point everybody to my webpage, paulharperforcps.com. For more information, please vote for Paul Harper on April 4th. Thank you.
Paul Harper, thank you. Make the switch. And so now we'll change the nameplate up front so you'll know who's speaking. John Potter is next. John Potter will come up and again, he'll have 2 minutes for an opening statement. And then the 4 questions that we went through that have already been provided. And then another student will have another question for John Potter. Welcome. And we'll entertain your opening statement.
Hello, my name is John Potter. I am a Columbia resident. I attended CPS public schools starting in elementary through high school. I have 3 children in the district, 2 in elementary, 1 in middle school, and next year they'll actually 1 in elementary, 1 in middle school, and 1 in high school. I got involved with the district during the shutdowns. I think that they were didn't provide or listen to voices of parents in the community. I ended up doing a petition drive in order to try to get the schools open once the shutdowns were prolonged too long. And I could see the devastation that it was having to my family, and actually talking to other families. They explained to me that everything that was going on was really bad for their children's education and mental health. So got involved with the district. I've been going to board meetings. I'm just kind of a grassroots candidate. Not in a million years that I think I'd be here right now. It's been very eye-opening the last 2.5 years. I've seen a lot of things in the district and found myself needing to be involved and really being a member of the community and trying to bring the community together to some extent, because I think it's kind of getting torn apart, especially for the last 3 years. And so just trying to bring parent transparency and accountability to the district.
All right, we've got the 1.5 minutes per question that were questions provided ahead of time. So we go to the first one. Public schools are required to accept all students with whatever challenges they bring. What are your expectations for making Columbia Public Schools successful for all?
Yeah, the district should be providing a educational environment for all students. And have high expectations for all students. I think that's the key to providing an education for everybody to have the best experience and learn as much as possible in our school district. The focus since I've been involved with the district hasn't been on education. It's been on a lot of other things that I think take your eye off the ball of education. I mean, this is an education school. It's for education. And so my slogan is get back to the basics. And that's what I want to do is take out all the distractions that you've heard about in the last few years, because, reading, writing, and math are the most important educational tools anybody can have. And our teachers need to start focusing on that. And that's why I want to work on an educational environment, because the teachers have had a lot of other obligations thrown on them, and it's affecting their teaching and affecting our students.
All right, the next question is, what do you plan to accomplish most as a school board member?
I think it goes back to making education the main focus of the district. It's education. What was the question again?
What do you plan to accomplish most as a school board member?
Oh, yes. And yeah, get transparency and accountability in the district and focus on education. We need the community to trust the district again. And in order for that trust to be successful, they have to be transparent and accountable to the public. And they have to provide a learning environment for all students. And the concentration of late has been a safe environment, which is great, but an educational environment, safety is a given. And so if we just get back to education, I think we can solve a lot of the community strife and the academic performances of our students. I mean, since I was in school, years ago, and me coming into the district, I've seen a lot of stuff that just distracts from education. And that's why I've been involved since my first school board meeting. There's language that is spoken at school board meetings that is just on a whole different level. And I think the normal parent can't understand it.
Next question is, what is the role of a classroom teacher?
The main role is to prepare lessons, deliver curriculum and instruction, assess students' work, and provide feedback and coaching. Here of late, I think that we put a lot more on their plate. I think they're also counselors and social workers and therapists and healthcare providers and security guards and like I said, if we just get back to education and take all these burdens off the teacher so they can teach, I think we can keep teachers in the district more and provide a better educational environment for our students.
Final question from the league tonight. There are efforts in Missouri to ban history topics, the teacher's speech, and also certain books. At the same time, the students are being killed by guns in classrooms. What do you think is the most pressing issue facing public schools, and how do you propose to address it?
Most pressing issues are teacher shortages, student academic performances, and student behavior. I will support policies that institute behavioral policies that maintain an educational environment. Support policies that get SRG out of our district because it doesn't hold children accountable for behavior issues, which we know is one of the main reasons for people not wanting to be teachers or teachers resigning. So to keep teachers employed at CPS, we need to work on the behavioral issues with students in the classroom. And that's why I want to take the focus back to education, because there's actually been policies changed in the past that make a safe environment for the students, but it's not necessarily an educational environment. So we need to, the kids that are disrupting and having behavior issues, we need to provide them with an educational environment, but also the students that are in class to learn need to be provided with an educational environment. So that's the main focus. Get things out of the district that hurt an educational environment. SRG is one of those because it doesn't hold kids accountable for behavior issues and attendance, and it artificially closes the achievement gaps.
Would you tell what SRG stands for?
Standard reference grading.
Let's get to our question from one of the students. Now, the student who came up with this question is a 16-year-old junior at Douglas High School, Gabrielle Tobias, and she has asked that one of her other students, a friend, comes and asks the question. We'll see Dakota in just a little while, but right now this is Dakota Francis. Come on up here, and your question, if you would, please, for John Potter.
In the CMNEA's annual forum that gathers school board candidates, you stated that the reason you're running for the school board is because you wanted to bring voices and a vote to the board that is from a different perspective than ever done before. What did you mean by this statement? Whose voices do you think have been missing or underrepresented?
Great question. Parents that I have in my transparency and accountability group and myself have expressed how it's, I guess if it's the conservative ideology or the, there's a ideology that's supported by the district and the teachers union, and it's the social justice stuff. And it's not the focus of the district. And so when parents start complaining about those types of things, they're just not being heard at all. Their emails are being tabled, or we've actually had people kicked out of the school board meeting. But it's mostly voices that, wanted to open up the schools, and instead of taking common sense steps, the district listened to the teachers union over the parents and kept the schools closed. Even though there was a lot of people saying that there would be a mental health crisis if we keep doing this, even though there was a lot of people saying that the teachers, if the students aren't in school, they're not learning. And I was told multiple times that there's no data to back that up. And now we have the data and nobody wants to talk about it.
False.
Thank you, Dakota. And since the candidate said that was a really good question, Gabrielle Caballas, you want to wave and say that was your question? Thank you for asking that question. Time for a 1-minute closing statement, John Potter.
Yes. The reason I'm running for school board is because there's a void of transparency and accountability, and there's a void of education in our district. I started a Facebook group page for accountability and transparency. I think it's been a valuable tool to the community. And I want to bring the education back to education. And in order to do that, we need to change what's going on in the district. If we keep doing what the district's been doing, voting the same people that are handpicked by national organizations or organizations here, we keep doing the same thing, we're gonna get the same results. So I would really appreciate it if we try to change the game up a little bit. I mean, I just want to educate the kids. Thanks.
John Potter, thank you. Candidates that will have come to the front table for the inquisition is Chris Horn. Just kidding.
Okay, I'm ready for it.
I know you are. Chris Horn, welcome. We appreciate you being here, and we'd like to hear your opening statement. We've got 2 minutes.
Dave, thank you. League of Women Voters, thank you. Everybody, thanks for coming out. You could have been anywhere, but those of you here, so I appreciate that. Can you hear me okay? Okay, so I'm Chris Horn, and I am seeking re-election to the Columbia Public School Board. 3 years ago, I ran because I really wanted to make sure that we did everything we could to support educators. I wanted to make sure that, we pushed inclusion until it became the norm. And I wanted to make sure that, I also ran on a platform of expanding early childhood education. I still believe in those things. Those things are great. We need them. And I have, in these last 3 years, I've learned the importance of the role of the school board governance. There's a lot of things that I talked about that I would do 3 years ago. But there's a lot of things that we need to do collectively, both the school board and our community. There's nothing that I can do individually as a school board member, but there's a lot of powerful things that we can do collectively as a board. And so I recognize the importance of governance, and I recognize the importance of continuity, and I recognize the importance of stability. I've also recognized the importance of being able to look at issues as they come up on their individual merits and advice nuance in the decisions that we make, and the importance of reaching out to folks and listening for feedback and including that in the great decisions. And so that's what I hope to do again for the next 3 years. And so that's why I'm here. A little bit of personal things while I've got some time left. I'm not from Columbia. My parents were in the Air Force. I moved every 4 or 5 years growing up. I did go to the University of Missouri. Columbia is the longest place that I've lived. My wife and our kids live here. My wife works for the district. We obviously support public education, which is why I'm back again. Thanks for having me.
All right. Let's go to question number one. Public schools are required to accept all students with whatever challenges they bring. What are your expectations for making Columbia Public Schools successful for all?
You know, that's the beauty of public education. We have all sorts of people with all sorts of experience, lived experiences that walk into and outside of our buildings. And we welcome everybody, and we are charged with educating everybody with everything they bring with them. And so we have to make sure that we're creating environments come as they are. And educators can come as they are, students can come as they are, and everybody can learn. And so being transparent about where we are, how we got here, and where we're going. And when I think about transparency, I'm talking about achievement. That's something that the board has done recently with regard to implementing our new CSIP and making sure we're putting achievement on the forefront. And if you've been to any recent school board meetings, you realize the data is not pretty, but it's not new. So when I talk about where we are, we're being very transparent about where we are from an achievement perspective, being transparent about how we got here. Things are not new. And being transparent about where we're going. We also need to have expectations, high expectations for all of our kids, regardless of. And we also need to have expectations that support our educators to make sure that they can be accountable for the success that they have in their classroom.
Next question is, what do you plan to accomplish most as a school board member?
I mentioned it in my opening statement, and I believe in it, governance. It's probably not the thing that we want to hear about, but that's what we need. We need to make sure that as school board members and as a board, we operate as a unit. We must have unity, but we don't have to have uniformity. We're gonna have 7 different individuals with 7 different experiences. We want to bring our whole selves, but we need to act as a unit. And we need to make sure we're putting the interests of the district above the interests of ourselves. Let's see, we talk a lot about the achievement gap. We need to talk about the gaps and opportunities before we get to an achievement gap. The achievement gap is a lagging indicator. And so as a governing board, we need to make sure that we are supporting our administrators, supporting our educators in a proactive manner to make sure that we can best understand what's coming, as opposed to reacting to it when it gets here. And lastly, ultimately, what I really want to do, and what I really hope for the colleagues on the board is to eliminate this false narrative that certain schools in Columbia Public Schools are better than the others. We have got to work towards that because we have high quality, fantastic educators in every single one of our buildings. And we have high achieving students in every single one of our buildings. And we have to make sure that every community member in Columbia knows that.
What is the role of a classroom teacher?
Man, usually we get to take a break.
No.
Sorry about that.
You can leave after you're done.
The role of a teacher is to change the world. I mean, it sounds cheesy, but it's true. I mean, these teachers impact students' lives every single day. Specifically, how do they do that? They are charged with creating critical thinkers. Okay, we've already heard the question, and it's going to come up here later about restrictions being placed on school districts. At the end of the day, what we want to do is make sure that our kids are equipped to go out to the world and critically think about everything that they encounter. And that's what teachers do. Teachers also hold themselves accountable for the success in the classroom. And they also help their students to do the same thing. I mentioned earlier, you know, it's important that students or teachers have high expectations for all of our kids. And that is something that they're accountable for doing. And lastly, what they do is they build relationships. They build relationships with students, they build relationships with parents, and they're bridge builders. And so all those to the end is making sure that kids are, you know, able to become the critical thinkers that we all want them to be.
I'll move in slow motion up here for the next one. There are efforts in Missouri to ban history topics, teacher speech, and certain books. At the same time, students are being killed by guns in classrooms. What do you think is the most pressing issue facing public schools, and how do you propose to address it?
The most pressing issue is something I mentioned earlier, in that from a school board perspective, we get really distracted by things that are tangent to education. We're concerned about everything that happens in the school district, everything. But we're responsible for limited things. And the more that we spend time pacing down and focusing on things that we're concerned about, rather than things that we're responsible for, it opens up the door for these distractions. And so really, at the end of the day, our responsibility, again, is to create critical thinkers. Our responsibility is to make sure that we are ensuring top quality, high education for all of our students. And the board, as a board, we can focus on the governance of that. By governance, I mean supporting, hiring, and being there for our administrator or one administrator that we do, but making sure that we are holding that administrator accountable for the achievement in this district. And also making sure that our policies are strong, making sure that we're financially solid, and making sure, particularly in our culture, it's growing, that we have plans for our buildings, our long-range facilities. The better we do those things, the better that we can give more autonomy to our teachers in our classrooms so that they can accomplish their mission of creating critical thinkers. And the better they do that, the better we focus on education and we don't get distracted by things that are tainted.
Avery Johnson, do you want to come on up? This is going to be interesting because again, the candidates have known what the first four questions are, but they don't know the student question. And based on what the candidate said to answer one of the earlier questions, I'm going to be interested in how he answers your question. Avery, this is Avery. I know the questions. This is Avery Johnson. She's 15, a sophomore at Hickman High School.
So how do you plan to fairly distribute funding between the schools and deal with the current inequity?
That's a great question. And so I really appreciate this question because as somebody who has served on the finance committee for the past couple of years, one of the things that we don't do very well is communicate everything that goes into distributing those funds. And there's a lot of reasons for it. I don't know the amount of excuses, but to answer your question, I think the district does a really good job of trying to distribute funds equitably. And education has expanded its scope. We do a lot more in our buildings than educate. We obviously feed kids. We make sure we respond to our free and reduced lunch population. We have a lot of expenses with regard to special education. We have a lot of behaviors that are happening. I'm listing all of these things because while we've expanded our scope, we've done so with the same pot of money. So I think it's incredibly important that when we receive our requests from our buildings, we're looking at those through an equitable lens and making sure that the resources that we have are going to the places where they're most needed. Do we always get it right? No. Are we working to get better? Absolutely. As an example, one of the things that we've done recently is we've signed an MOU with Borough for additional mental health services at Battle High School. Okay, that's just one example, and we can list other ones as well. But my point is, we are responsive, and we're trying to do so from an equitable lens. And there's always opportunities for improvement.
Avery Johnson, thank you for your question. All right, it's time for the closing 60-second comments and closing statement from Chris Horn.
Thank you again, League of Women Voters, for being here, or for having us. Thank you to the library as well. And thank you everybody again for being here. You guys that are sitting here and the folks that are listening, the folks that are going to vote in for you guys have an important decision to make. As we go forward, at best, we're going to have a school board comprised of 7 members that are going to be 5 of which are going to be in their first year, in their first term, 2 of which are going to be brand new. That math is not right. Excuse me. 4 of which are going to be in their first term, and two of which are going to be new, and the other 2 are going to be in their second term. The first time was right. My point is this: stability is important. Consistency is important. It took me 2 years minimum to learn what it was and what it is to serve as a school board member, and I still have a lot left to learn. And that learning was accelerated by COVID, to be quite honest with you. And so, as you think about going to the polls, remember that stability matters, so does consistency. And I ask for your vote on April 4th, Chris Horn. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris Horn. As James Gordon comes up, he is the next. I'll just say this for those who are up front, maybe you don't know, but this is almost a full room. We don't have many seats that are empty. And then I was just told that on remotely on our Zoom, we have 60 participants that way. I think it is an indication of, yeah, it's an indication of how important this community takes these kinds of matters of elections that impact the local community as much, if not more, than any of the other elections. So our next guest at the front table is James Gordon, and we welcome him, and we'll look forward to his 2-minute opening statement.
Thank you all. I am James Gordon, and I am running for Columbia Public School Board because I want us to cherish our schools. Our schools are the roots of our community. They are the ideals of our community made material as accessible places with accessible resources and equitable opportunities and equitable support. Right now, CPS needs political leadership that lifts up the immeasurable value of our schools and understands public education as a pathway to our collective thriving over generations. As a member of the school board, I will listen, lead, and call everyone into our shared responsibility to guarantee that every kid in our community has access to an education that will amplify their unique gifts and accommodate their unique challenges. I started my family here in Columbia with my spouse, Reverend Molly House Gordon. We moved here a little over 10 years ago, and since I've been here, I have earned a master's degree at the journalism school at the University of Missouri, and also taught data journalism and product development in that school. I have worked in the innovation space in media and now work as a political strategist with an emphasis on the practical and inclusive use of data for community change. We started our family here, and our oldest kid is a first grader at West Boulevard Elementary, and our youngest will start there in the fall. Of course, CPS has issues that need our attending, and I look forward to discussing those specifics with you all tonight, or at some point before or after the election day on April 4th. But no matter what issue we face, no matter how serious or scary the problem is, I want to challenge everybody who's listening to me right now, especially our students, to find the bravery for us to find the bravery for us to be honest with each other, and the humbleness to learn from each other, and the trust to work together.
All right, first question from the league. Public schools are required to accept all students with whatever challenges they bring. What are your expectations for making Columbia Public Schools successful for all?
I expect CPS to prioritize the issues of equity and accessibility as preconditions for academic achievement. Superintendent Yearwood wants us to refer to every CPS student as a scholar. To me, that means proceeding from the premise that all of our students have an innate motivation and an innate capacity to learn. And what I understand then is that we must also resist any impulse to set lower expectations for any student. And yet, if we look at the district's most recent academic performance and the other reports that have been coming out at the school board meetings, how do we reconcile the observed disparities in learning outcomes with this conception of scholars as for our students as scholars? To me, this signals the work that we need to do as a district to remove barriers to learning that still exist. And then we must begin that by focusing first on meeting the basic needs of students struggling against social and economic inequities and the lack of accessibility. So I want every student to come into Columbia schools ready to learn regardless of their circumstances or regardless of their zip code. And I want every student to have an opportunity to engage with their peers with confidence and the guidance to interact with kindness. And I want this especially for those kids who have the greatest needs. And this is what I mean when I talk about equity. And when I talk about accessibility, I mean that we must design and implement systems and resources that focus on students who have the greatest barriers to access. And when we do that, everyone will benefit.
Next question is, what do you plan to accomplish most as a school board member?
Our school board, as has been mentioned before, needs to define a more proactive and intentional governing structure that will prioritize accessibility and equity in our policymaking. One of the strategies for how we would do that is to implement more feedback loops within our system. And a really great example of this that I encountered very early in my conversations during this campaign is with our educators, those who are leading. Right now, we have not just a recruitment problem, but a retention problem with especially our educators who are Black, Indigenous people of color. And one thing we're not even doing is giving exit interviews with these educators. And that is just a real disappointment to hear, because that's standard practice in most professional spaces now. That's the great opportunity for us to gather insights about what is not working and why we cannot, we're not fully supporting, especially our best educators that we need to retain. And another thing I look forward to seeing more implemented more in our school district is the kind of project-based learning environments that involve students in helping imagine better solutions for their challenges to access and the problems they're struggling with.
All right, next question, following up on that one, what is the role of a classroom teacher?
After students, I believe that teachers are the most important people in our school system. As we noted in the recent special education audit, there's just simply no substitute for instruction from an experienced and content-strong educator who has the support to follow their vocational impulse to teach, and also has the latitude to adapt their methods to meet the needs of the students where they are. And that is what I most want to do, is reinforce that relationship between the students and the teachers, because that is the linchpin of our district success.
Final question from the league for the candidate. There are efforts in Missouri to ban history topics in teacher speech and certain books. At the same time, students are being killed by guns in classrooms. What do you think is the most pressing issue facing public schools, and how do you propose to address it?
I think these issues both have the same common root in toxic elements within our culture that are focused on or willing to place death on some of us for the sake of concentration of wealth. And what it's been going on in Jeff City for far too long, and what we need to be willing to defy a little bit more is really not just an anti-public education agenda, which has been well funded by economic elites, but even an anti-literacy agenda that says that there are particular books telling particular stories that students should be denied access to. And we know why they're doing that. They understand that knowledge is self-determination, and that that knowledge will be the key to their undoing eventually, and their loss of power. And so we're not going to stand for that, period.
Ramat Adekunle is a 17-year-old senior at Hickman, and Ramat is not able to be with us. I'm told she's watching on Zoom, so if I've mispronounced your name, I apologize. And if I don't get your question right, put it in the chat and tell me how to do this. So here's her question for you. How can the board be accessible to the community and to specific community groups?
This is a great question. I hear a lot about transparency as I've been campaigning here. And I think that that's a word that's being used to describe lots of things. And one of them is just pure information accessibility. This includes how we publish information about what is happening within our district on our website, how we publicize the decisions and the notes from our school board meetings and our committee meetings. And so accessibility is really about focusing on those with the greatest barriers to access. And in the context of like web development, that means you might consider what it would be to interact with a website if you needed a screen reader because you had some sort of vision impairment. And when you do that, you actually discover that the website will load faster and perform better for everyone, even if they're on a slower network. And so this is the wisdom of accessibility design, is that when we prioritize the needs of those who have the greatest barriers to access, then we all benefit from that. And so, yeah, how we make our information more accessible to our communities is a big factor in how we rebuild that trust within our school district and also between our district and our community.
Vermont, thank you for your question. And now for James Gordon, your final 60-second comment.
Yeah, so thank you, the League of Women Voters, for inviting all of us here. Again, my name is James Gordon, and my campaign is focused on three areas, which are equity, accessibility, and trust. When we talk about equity, we're not just talking about these DEI trainings, which are important, but we are talking about how we identify and remediate those systemic biases within all of our social, economic, and political systems. That's something that isn't just the work of our school district, but of our broader community, and which is why we need to continue to seek out ways to involve our community, including and especially the most important stakeholders, which are our students. They have the most insights to share about what is and is not working, and the greatest capacity to imagine better possibilities. Thank you.
Thank you, James Gordon. John Lyman will be next. We'll welcome John Lyman up for the questions again. These are questions that were provided ahead of time to the candidates. And we are at candidate number 5 of the 7. So John Lyman, welcome. And we'd like to hear your opening 2-minute statement.
Like looking down this big long aisle here. So, well, thank you, David. Thank you to the League of Women Voters. Thank you for everybody for watching and listening. Thank you to the public library. This is the second time I've been in the library in like the last week or two, getting my daughter a passport, which is kind of weird that we're sending her to Belize, but that's cool. I'm a 1998 Rockbridge High School graduate. I went to first grade at Grant Elementary, which is my math is right, is that way. Went to Russell, went to West Junior, went to Rockbridge. After that, I went to the University of Missouri, where I got a degree in geography with a minor in history. And everybody at my job will tell me that if I don't say that I was Truman the Tiger when I was at Mizzou, they're gonna think that. My wife is Molly. She's a 18-year teaching veteran in the district. She's taught all over town, I feel like. She's been coaching the cheerleading squad at Hickman for 20 years. Together, we have a high schooler at Hickman, a middle schooler at Smithton, and an elementary schooler at Paxton Keeley, where my wife is a 4th grade teacher. The school board's something that's been on my mind for a while. Finally decided to throw my hat in the ring and see what happened. As a school board member, I really want to build a strong, forward-thinking, equitable district that celebrates the fantastic diversity that our world and our city has. I want to make sure that we're building a transparent district office. I think that's something that everyone is going to say tonight. And I want to make sure that we're continuing to support our teachers, our staff, and our administrators in our buildings. They are our frontline workers. They are the ones with our students every day. They are the ones who need as much support as we can give them. And you're going to hear me say this a lot. I want to do it together. We have to do this together.
All right, let's move to the questions now. Public schools required to accept all students with whatever challenges they bring. What are your expectations for making Columbia Public Schools accessible and successful, I should say, for all?
So we've had these questions for a while, and this is the one that I have had in my car with me and gone back and forth with a lot because I don't know that I like the word expectation. I would replace that with demand. I think we should be demanding that our schools are equitable to everyone, regardless of the zip code that they're from, regardless of their home life, their color of their skin, their socioeconomic status, anything that we can potentially label them. They're a student. We need to be making sure that all of them are receiving the same educational opportunities, the same experience as everyone else. That is crucial to making sure that they are ready for whatever the world gives them once they graduate.
Next question is, what do you plan to accomplish most as a school board member?
So the last decade or so or more, the world, the country has become pretty divisive. The COVID pandemic absolutely exacerbated that. You can agree with someone on 99 things, but then there's the one, and you can't vibe with them anymore on that. we've got to bring everybody back to the table. Like, this is going to be a group project to get test scores up, to get graduation rates up, to get the reading and the writing and the math and the science and all of that up. We've got to work together. No one knows the right way to do this. We've all got a really good idea. We've all got the best intentions, I think. But we've got to work together to get there. We've got to work, our schools have got to work together. Our community members have got to work together. Our teachers, our staff, our administrators. I love that our students are here asking questions. I love you, David, but I would listen to them ask questions all day. Those are great questions. But, you know, we've got to, everybody's got to have a seat at the table. Everybody has to have, if our students are getting equitable educations, our parents need equitable voices when it comes to what happens in our public school system.
Next question is, what is the role of a classroom teacher?
So like I said, my wife has been teaching for a long time, and the number one rule in her classroom every year is to keep her students safe. That's her number one job, is to keep her students safe. The only way they can learn is if they are in a safe learning environment. That's paramount. Their job then, our teachers' jobs then are to prepare our students for life, prepare all our students for life. That was the 4 or 5 words. If I had to boil down what the school board's job was, that's what it is, what the school district's job is. It's to prepare all our students for life. And again, our teachers are our frontline workers that are doing that. We trust them greatly. I drop my child off every morning at Smithton, and he walks in the door, and I'm trusting that everything that happens in that school is safe, and that the teacher that he's going to be interacting with and the students he's going to be interacting with are going to lead to his, you know, success. That's what we want. Our schools are there to keep our kids safe, to keep our kids in good learning environments, and to make sure they are ready for whatever their experiences are after graduation.
And final question from the league for this candidate. There are efforts in Missouri to ban history topics and teacher speech and certain books. At the same time, students are being killed by guns in classrooms. What do you think is the most pressing issue facing public schools, and how do you propose to address it?
Safety is the easy answer, making sure that our students are safe, making sure that our teachers, the staff, and our administrators are safe. Can't have a learning environment if the people there are afraid of anything. And it's not just the physical violence, it's bullying, it's all of the other things that come into play. I mean, middle school's rough, elementary school's rough, high school's rough for a lot of kids. We've got to make sure that they want to be in school and they feel safe being there. Like I said, I have a minor in history. History is something that greatly interests me. History is something that we cannot censor. Things happen that we're not going to be proud of. We have to learn those things in school. We have to learn those things so that we know to not do those again. The 1619 Project is a fantastic read. If you don't have the time to read it, because it's a giant book, watch the Hulu documentary. It's fantastic. It is the new Howard Zinn's People's History of the United States that came out in 1980. Everybody hated that book because it told history from a perspective that we didn't know. We didn't never heard of. It doesn't mean it wasn't true. It happened. So we have to have those things in our schools. Our students need to learn the other perspectives on history so that they understand and have a greater grasp on what happened and how we can move forward.
Our student question is again from Ramat Adekunle, the 17-year-old senior from Hickman, who asked this question: given all the issues that arise, how can the board stay focused on student achievement?
Chris kind of brought it up. There's a lot of other things. I jokingly call it kind of knucklehead stuff because it's stuff that does not, that takes away time from the school board and from our teachers and our staff and our administrators from doing their jobs. And that's preparing our students for life. It is a very, very difficult task. Things going on in Jeff City certainly aren't helping. But that's again why I think we need to work together. These ideas that are being presented aren't necessarily wrong. But they are things that if people have questions about, let's sit down and talk about them. We might be right, we might be wrong, but we've got to, again, work together. But it's the weird little one-off things. Hey, we're trying to get test scores up. We're trying to get attendance up. We're trying to do all of these things to prepare our students for life. And then things get derailed by this thing that has nothing to do with education. It has nothing to do with preparing our students for life. Those things are important. I don't want to belittle those. We need to have those conversations and talk about those things. But we've got to remember what we're here for. And that's making sure that when our students graduate, whatever the world gives them, whatever direction they decide to go, they're ready for it.
I want to again thank Ramana Adekunle for her questions today, and John Lyman, your final comment, 60 seconds.
So my campaign slogan is forward together. That's what I want to do. I want to continue to move our district forward, but we have to do it together. It takes a village. This is going to be the ultimate, like I said, group project to continue building a strong district. I love to learn. This is my cell phone. If you go on the website, go on the Facebook page and call the number, like my wife did a little bit ago when I was sitting over there, and it's gonna ring. If you went on there right now and called it, it's gonna ring. I didn't get another one. Call me. Let's get together. Let's have a cup of coffee. Got a lot of coffee. If you want to grab a beer or something, that's cool too. But let's get together and let's talk. I want to learn about your perspective, especially if it's different than mine. Those have been some of the best conversations that I've had with folks so far, is people who think differently than me. I don't have all the right ideas, but I want to learn what you think they might be. So get out and vote. There's going to be a major cultural shift on our board in this next election. And I hope to be a part of that.
John Lyman, thank you. Our next candidate will come up and we'll welcome to the front April Corral, who is running for the school board. Again, remember that you'll vote for 3 of the 7 candidates on April the 4th. So this is 3 of the group that will be elected to serve on the school board. April Corral, welcome, and your opening statement, please.
I should be easy to find on the ballot. I will be the only woman. That should help narrow it down. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for having us out here today. I think this is the largest forum that we've been to so far at this point, which is exciting. To tell you a little bit about myself, my husband and I moved here from the Chicagoland area in 2000. We have 2 students, one student that graduated in 2021 from Hickman and another graduating this year. They have attended their entire lives at Columbia Public Schools and were very active in athletics, activities, and clubs at the district. My husband is supposed to be here someplace tonight, but he is generally deployed to Washington, DC, where he's been staying since 2015. But we decided to stay here and keep our kids in Columbia Public Schools because of the wonderful experiences that they were having. I recently left my job with the city to run for this position. As a city employee, you're not able to run for public office. So that was a choice that I needed to make because I am committed to Columbia Public Schools. I've owned my own property management company and have some background in data analysis and degrees from Southern Illinois University in Carbondale. But for the last 15 years, I've really been heavily involved in our public schools through executive positions and leadership positions at Ridgeway, West Middle School, and Hickman High School. Anywhere from working with students in the classroom to major fundraising efforts. Beyond my work in the classrooms, I've been attending board meetings for probably a decade. In the last couple of years, I've been meeting with board members and district administration and getting a better understanding of board operations, which will hopefully help with that learning curve that Chris was talking about. I've been considering this for the past 5 to 10 years. And I've just found that I have a true passion for our students' achievements, and I hope you'll agree.
Let's go to the questions then that were again submitted to the candidates by the League of Women Voters ahead of this forum. Public schools are required to accept all students with whatever challenges they bring. What are your expectations for making Columbia Public Schools successful for all?
Well, I think we learned a lot from the special education audit that recently came out, and they had several suggestions of things that we could tackle as a district. Of course, you don't want to be ambitious and tackle everything at once, or you will not do anything stellarly. We also just got the annual progress reports today, and we see that some of our schools are doing much better than other schools. So I think that the board needs to make sure that their role is oversight. And so they work with the superintendent to help create goals and guidelines for achievement, and the board needs to be working with them for those goals and then reviewing those progresses on a regular basis. I expect that our district will be providing an excellent education for all of our students, again, regardless of their zip code or which school they're attending. Our special education students and other special needs students, I expect IEPs and 504s to be written with their specific needs in mind, and those documents to be adhered to per federal law. I expect there to be a working environment that's free of a fear of retaliation, so that all employees can come together and provide a collaborative approach to meeting all the goals that the district sets forth. And I expect that we value that collaborative approach, and I want us to be more transparent in the community as the public has asked for.
Next question is, what do you plan to accomplish most as a school board member?
Well, again, we've talked about it earlier tonight, and I think one of my most immediate goals is transparency and accessibility. I believe that all of our public meetings of the school board should be available live streamed and via recordings. And of course, they're always open to the public. Unfortunately, sometimes people can't attend because they have to go to work, but having a recording will allow them to at least play it back later if they have a way to access that. The board again provides oversight, but the board has some things within its control, and so should be able to control their meetings being public, should be able to control contracts that they sign, information that they're determining, putting documents available out there so that they're easily accessible, easily searchable for the public to be able to find. And I believe that when more information is available, that there is more data for people to be able to work at a collaborative approach to help improve that student achievement, to improve the working and learning environments of all our students and teachers in our buildings.
Next question is, what is the role of a classroom teacher?
Rapid fire.
We got to be out of here by a certain time.
Oh my goodness. No pressure. The number one role of a classroom teacher is obviously to teach. I mean, that's what they went to school for. That's what they're professionals in. And that includes, they need to have time to do their lesson plannings. They need to do the instruction. They need to grade. They need to provide feedback to the students. They need to help them set goals. They need to reteach. Unfortunately, our teachers are also charged with classroom management, behavior management. They're charged with dealing with mental health issues, trauma. They're charged with helping maybe troubleshoot food insecurity, transportation delays, general safety concerns, and they've become a jack of all trades, maybe even how to fix the blinds in their classroom. So we need to, the board needs to support the administration in helping them take more work off the teachers' plates. That is not the most important piece that they're doing, which is teaching our students. When the teachers are given the resources and the time to do the job that they were hired to do, they can inspire our students. They can foster in them a lifelong love of learning.
Our last question from the league is, again, this one: there are efforts in Missouri to ban history topics, teacher speech, and certain books. At the same time, students are being killed by guns in classrooms. What do you think is the most pressing issue facing public schools, and how do you propose to address it?
I do think the most pressing issue facing our public schools is what does feel like an attack on public education many times. There are a host of poorly written or worded bills currently being considered at the state. And I think when you don't have experience in the classroom, sometimes you can't see how you've written a bill maybe with great intention, but you don't understand what the ramification is going to be once it is implemented. And so I think as a board, beyond setting our legislative priorities, we need to be having open conversations and dialogues with people that are sponsoring the bills so that we can gather a better understanding of what their proposal is, why is the proposal, and how to work together for the best interest of all our students.
Let's go to the question from the student, Jackie. This is Jackie Ozanich. She is an 18-year-old senior at Battle High School who gets the opportunity to ask this candidate a question.
Hi, what steps do you believe the district should take to improve student and staff mental health? Could you repeat that?
Yeah, right up there.
Okay, sorry. What steps do you believe the district should take to improve student and staff mental health?
Well, one thing I recently learned is there are some benefits available to the staff for mental health, but it may not quite be as accessible. So we need to be providing accessible mental health benefits to our staff. And for our students, I think all of our buildings need mental health professionals in them. We have too many kids that are suffering from mental health issues, and we have some buildings that, you know, you have a counselor that maybe is part-time. You have, I think at Battle High School, there may be one mental health counselor for 1,600 students. At Hickman, we have one mental health professional for 2,100 students. That is not enough to deal with everything. So we definitely need more mental health supports in our schools, every one of them.
Jackie Ozanich, thank you. Again, a senior at Battle High School. And this leads us to the 60-second wrap up, your closing comment, April.
So I mentioned earlier, I've spent about a quarter of my life working with CPS. And I just found that I have a passion to see all students achieve. You know, they come in as 5-year-olds and they can be anything. And we need to continue to foster that. And I just can't get away from it. And this is something that I just really enjoy. I think that I've spent so much time in our schools that I have a unique perspective that I can bring to the board to help with that oversight that the board provides. Because I've been around for 15 years, I've seen what happens in the classrooms frequently and over a long period of time to be able to bring that experience forward. And if you'd like to know more about my campaign, you can find me at www.april4cps.com or on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And just remember to vote April in April.
Oh, Corral, thank you. Our next candidate is Chuck Batesy, and he's going to come and again offer his opening statement, and then we'll go through the questions and have a student question for him also. Chuck Batesy, thank you for being here and welcome. 2-minute opening statement.
All right, thank you, David. And thanks to the League of Women Voters for the opportunity tonight. My name is Chuck Batesy. I'm running for the school board, of course, and had a little trouble getting on the ballot, but that seemed to work out once the board ruled that the school district was violating state law. And anyway, but here we are, and we're on the way to April 4th. I have plenty of experience. I worked for 27 years for the federal government with the Federal Aviation Administration. I spent 4 years in the United States Marine Corps, and also did a 4-year stint with Lockheed Martin Corporation. And when I retired from the FAA, I ran for public office and became a state representative for 8 years. Turned out last fall, and now I'm a field representative for Congressman Blaine Lukemeyer. And luckily, I have his full support to run for the board. We've had a couple conversations on this, and I'm glad that he is accommodating me to attend a lot of these meetings here. So anyway, I'm looking forward to the challenge, and I realize what I'm up against, but see what happens on April 4th.
Okay, thank you. Now let's go to the questions. Public schools are required to accept all students with whatever challenges they bring. What are your expectations for making Columbia Public Schools successful for all?
Well, we do accept all children, all public school districts in Missouri do that. However, once they get in there, not all kids are receiving a quality education, as the test scores have repeatedly revealed since actually well before COVID. For the last 10 to 12 years, the Columbia Public School test scores have been declining, and they don't appear to be getting any better. So I think thanks to John Potter, he recovered some information that they incorporated in the Columbia School District about 11 years ago or so. I might be wrong on that, but changed the disciplinary, the way they handle discipline in the school. And I think that has a correlation to why we're seeing these terrible declining results. So we got to do much better, especially for our low income students. The scores are just absolutely abysmal, and they have really showing no signs of getting any better.
Okay, second question is, what do you plan to accomplish most as a school board member?
Okay, that's a great question. I think there's a void in our school district, has been for the better part of 10 years on the boards. There's a lack of accountability and transparency to the public. As I already mentioned, our academic performance is just absolutely horrible. We're not providing our students a foundation for success once they get out of life. If they graduate, great graduation rate here in Columbia. They brag about it repeatedly. I remember Dr. Steepleman constantly said, "We got a great graduation rate. That's fine and dandy." But when the proficiency rates are so low in core subjects, we're doing a disservice. So we're graduating children that are not educated. So we got to do better than that. And finally, I'm going to be a voice for parents, children, taxpayers that have no voice on that board right now. There's been repeated examples where they treated citizens horribly in that school board office. And here we got a lawsuit going on. In addition to mine, Wayne Sells was treated absolutely horribly. His constitutional rights were violated, and I'm rooting for him to have a big day in court here in the future. And I'm looking forward to seeing that happen.
Next question is, what is the role of a classroom teacher?
Well, it's very basic. Our teachers are there to educate our children. And as long as they have a valid teaching certificate in the certain content area, they're there to educate our children. But our teachers are under horrible stress right now. I have two very recent surveys, both from the MSTA and from the National Education Association. This one, the NEA's survey, is less than a year old, and they both pretty much say the same thing. You hear a lot of, they always talk about pay. People complain about teacher pay. Well, that is part of it, but both these surveys, and I will be happy to share these with anybody that wants them. I can email these to you. Both these surveys indicate teachers are very, very concerned with discipline and safety in the classroom. And the biggest thing is they're not getting the support from the school boards across the state and the administration. It's not only their principals, but their superintendents are not providing them support that they need. So that is the reason these teachers are leaving and not seeing a profession. I mean, we got to do a much better job for the teachers in that regard.
Our last question from the league. There are efforts in Missouri to ban history topics to teacher speech and certain books. At the same time, students are being killed by guns in classrooms. What do you think is the most pressing issue facing public schools, and how do you propose to address it?
Well, I'm really glad that when I saw this question, I was really happy to see it. I disagree with it 100%. There is no effort to ban history by the state legislature or anybody else I'm aware of. They're not curtailing teacher speech. They're not banning books. They just think that some of these things have no place in the environment that they're in right now. And I can give you an example. if anybody's spanning history, just look 5 years ago, the Columbia Public Schools changed the name on a school building that had been there for over 100 years. So who's banning history? And gun violence, yeah, that's a problem, but there's a lot of, it's not just happening in the schools, it's happening in all across the country, and it's not being done by law-abiding gun owners. It's being done by thugs, gangs, and mentally impaired individuals that do these horrible shootings. So, but that is, I can't believe that somebody is indicating that state legislature is banning history or curtailing teacher speech, because that is not what's happening whatsoever.
All right.
Get control of this meeting, sir.
We're fine. We're moving on to the student question. 17-year-old junior at Douglas High School, Dakota Francis, comes back up. And Dakota will have our final question for our candidate.
I'm aware of incidents that have made minority and trans students in CPS feel unsafe and uncomfortable. I myself had another student threaten me because of the gender I assigned myself with, and it was never dealt with. So many other students in this district have similar stories to mine. What are your plans to make trans students and students of color feel safe and welcomed in Columbia public spaces?
Well, that indeed happened. It is unfortunate that it happened to you. So that goes back to what I said, the administration, the school board, and principals in the buildings are apparently not doing their job if that in fact happened. So everybody deserves to be wanted, and everybody deserves to be able to attend public schools without being picked on or bullied. And that's always something that we should improve on.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question.
Dakota Francis, thank you. And now a 1-minute closing statement from Chuck Basie.
Well, thank you again to the league for this opportunity. It's I've always enjoyed these forums when I was in a candidate for the state legislature. And as I mentioned earlier, I am going to focus very strongly on accountability and transparency that is lacking in this district. The school district is hiding so many things from the public. I'll give you one example. Twice I have submitted a sunshine request trying to get the contract they signed with an organization out of the St. Louis area, the National Center for Community Justice. I've been denied that information twice. And what that is, they're teaching the teachers how to teach CRT. They just call it something else now. And they're not denying that this is in existence. They want me to pay for it. And it's an existing contract that should be publicly available and easily accessible, and they're not providing that information. And
Hang on, folks.
so anyway, I'm going to work very hard in the next 4 weeks, and I expect to be elected to the school board. And I want to thank my fellow candidates here for their participation as well. Even though we don't agree on a lot of issues, I do appreciate their efforts.
Chuck Basie, thank you. Just want to say again, thank you to the students and for those who've organized the students to be here. As you've heard, you have some very good questions, and the candidates did appreciate your questions. Thank you. Okay, with Chuck Basie, Chris Horn, John Lyman, James Gordon, John Potter, April Corral, Paul Harper. How'd I do? I got everybody's name right. You're going to have those names on the ballot on April 4th. You'll elect 3 should you choose to use all the choices that you are allowed, and you will elect 3 to the school board for their term. Thank you again. And some of you are probably going to be transitioning out of here. I hope not everybody, because we have the 5th ward. And then we also have presentations on the 2 ballot issues that deal with taxing marijuana use. So thank you, school board members. We're going to take a 2-minute break. So we've got part 2 of the candidate forum, supported again by the League of Women Voters and also the Columbia Public Library. So again, those of you who are still here, we appreciate your being here and giving time to listen to what the candidates have to say. And for the second portion of the forum, we're going to have both candidates up at the front. I meant to ask the school board candidates, and those of you who are here, if you know the school board candidates, I wanted to get their impression of how they liked what the league came up with for that particular, with 7 candidates. I kind of like having each focus on the candidates one at a time, but again, that's something that I think the league will reevaluate and maybe get some feedback from those who were part of that portion of the forum. So I'm going to recognize Ward 1 candidate Nick Knoth. I'm not sure he's back there, folks, incognito with the stocking hat on. So if you'd like to talk to him, we're not going to do a Ward 1 candidate forum like we will with Ward 5 because Nick Knoth is going to run unopposed, although as I understand it, there will be 2 names on the ballot in Ward 1, but Pat Fowler has said she has withdrawn her candidacy. Candidates for Ward 5 are Donald Waterman and Greg Bush. Columbia has 7 members of the city council, 6 are representatives of wards, and 1 is the mayor. Each council member serves a 3-year staggered term, so each year 2 ward seats are up for election, and every 3rd year the mayor is up for election. This year, 2 seats are up for election. Ward 5 is the lone one with a contested seat. Our candidates are Donald Waterman and Greg Bush. They're going to have a 2-minute opening statement. Then we're going to have questions. The league has provided some questions. And if you'd like to ask a question here, there are index cards available. You can write your question on that. The league will collect those. So you'll raise them up high and one of the league members will collect those and bring them up to the front. If you are following us on the Zoom today, you can also put questions in the chat portion of the Zoom feed, and the league members will monitor these questions and will provide those so we can ask the candidates those questions. Then we'll have the answers to the questions, 1 minute each question, and then candidates a 1-minute closing statement. Opening statements will be presented in the ballot order. So Donald Waterman, welcome. Glad that you are here and you have up to 2 minutes for your opening statement.
Thank you, David. Pleasure to be here. Microphone working all right? Can everybody hear me? Okay, good. Again, thank you, David. And thank you to the League of Women Voters for this opportunity. My name is David, has said, Don Waterman. I previously ran for the 46th district back in 2016. I have been a resident of Columbia for roughly 20 years. Moved here in 2001 after I retired from the Navy. Was here up until 2010. I left for a short time to go get a master's degree and then returned in 2013 and lived here ever since. People have asked me why I'm doing this. It's because I love Columbia. The promise it has, the opportunities it has, and I want to see it continue to grow. I want to see it thrive in a variety of ways. There's a lot of opportunities here. We have, of course, the university. We're known for our healthcare. So it's a great community. I just think that there are some things that I see with the council that I think could be maybe some, I'm going to say, leavening, a voice that can maybe a slightly different perspective to say, hey, let's look at something. And I think that's when we achieve our best things, are when we work together. We take into account, take into the consideration and the calculation as many opportunities or as many viewpoints as we can, so that we can then arrive at the solution that's best for everybody in Columbia.
All right, thank you, Donald Waterman. Now, Greg Bush, your opening 2-minute statement.
Thank you, David. Thank you, League of Women Voters. Thank you, Daniel Boone Regional Library. My name is Greg Bush and I'm running for the 5th Ward, Columbia. I moved here in 2006. We didn't know anybody except the person that I moved with. Got a job at a hospital cleaning intensive care unit room. I had a fine arts degree, so I was used to hard work. I was such a good, artist that I actually had to use my hands and such in order to make ends meet. Someone took a notice of me and said, why don't you become a clerk here in the ICU? That person noticed and invested in me. And then a short time later, they said, you might be able to be a nurse, which was not on the radar at all at the time. Said, well, I'm going to take some classes here at Columbia College, see if I can actually do the work. And I was successful. And I discovered that there was an accelerated program at the University of Missouri Sinclair School. And since I already had a college degree, I applied and got in. I was a Robert Wood Johnson Scholar, which are new careers in nursing. And in a year and a half after that, I was a registered nurse, graduated in 2012. Since then, through hard work and a lot of good luck and good fortune, I moved up through the ranks, to charge nurse, the shift supervisor. And then after being a shift supervisor, went through into case management for a year. And now I deal with patient education and professional development. I really look forward to hearing some questions from the audience.
All right, Greg Bush, thank you. We'll go to the questions and we'll start with the questions from the League of Women Voters. And we'll start with Mr. Waterman first on this one. And again, they have a minute to answer these questions. Do you support Columbia Water and Light working to achieve 100% clean renewable energy by 2030 in order to achieve a 50% reduction in emissions by 2035?
I'll meet you halfway. I support the goal and the initiative for the renewable resources. Can we get there by 2030 and do it efficiently, effectively, and without causing harm to some of our citizens? I'm not sure that we can. That's 7 years. Again, I'm not sure that we can. We can all do better as far as taking care of the environment. But as far as being able to get there to that goal to 100% renewable in 7 years, I'm not sure what the current percentage is. But again, I'm not sure that we can do it without causing issues, causing harm to some of our more vulnerable citizens here in Columbia.
All right, thank you. And Mr. Butcher, same question. Do you support Columbia Water and Light working to achieve 100% clean renewable energy by 2030 in order to achieve a 50% reduction in emissions by 2035?
Yes.
All right, save time there. Do you want to expand on that?
Well, it's an ambitious goal. Make no mistake, this is an ambitious goal. I'm happen to be a pretty ambitious person. And I think Columbia is a pretty ambitious town. And the more we do for our houses and things, for our homes and our house, my heart speaks defense, for our houses and homes in order to make sure that they are well insulated and that we have energy efficiency in place. I think that I would like to know, I would like to, I think that's a really ambitious goal and I'm for it. Like, let's make it happen. If there's a place that can do it, it's Columbia.
Let's go to another question that the league would like to have answered. We'll start with Greg Bush on this one. What motivated you to run for this office?
As an RN, I have gone from being an artist to be a part of the healing arts. Developing relationships with people at their most vulnerable when they are sick or injured, or sometimes they get really good news from an MRI. I think that those kinds of skills and discernment can lend itself to become a competent, personable, thoughtful city council person.
Don Waterman, same question. What motivated you to run for office?
As I said in my opening statement, I love Columbia. I think there's a lot of opportunity that has presented itself. I took advantage of some of the opportunities when I came here. I started to work for the university. I finished my education there, finished my bachelor's degree using their evening studies program. So again, lots of opportunities. Commend Greg for him taking advantage of the opportunities. I want to see it stay. I want to see it continue to grow and thrive in taking care of the least advantaged of us, but also in providing the business opportunities. We've had some great success stories here. Veterans United, Equipment Share, Helium, and others. Some explosive growth there. But I would also like to see that in other areas. But part of that is also then safety. And the other reason is there was a solicitation that was sent out. It basically said, hey, is anybody interested in running because we don't have a candidate? And I said, well, why not me?
Let's go to another question from the league, and we'll start with Mr. Waterman on this one. Do you support adopting minimum efficiency standards for rental housing in Columbia and adopting the 2021 International Building Codes for Energy Conservation.
I think we should be as efficient as possible in our housing. I know there was a program, I think it still exists, but that I took advantage of. And that was to upgrade my furnace, get some insulation in the attic, survey and a lot of other, an efficiency surveys. I think we should be doing that regardless. So we talked about becoming 100% renewable. Part of that to get there is we're going to have to be as efficient as possible in our housing, whether it's new construction or it's older housing. I know that's an issue when you start talking about affordable housing is the cost of utilities. So that's something that needs, again, the more efficient it is, the lower the cost of utilities, so then they can put their limited resources into other areas.
We'll go to Greg Bush for the same question. Do you support adopting minimum efficiency standards for rental housing in Columbia and adopting the 2021 International Building Codes for Energy Conservation?
Again, the answer is yes, I do. And I want to tell you why, this time without prompting. The reason why is these are investments into people. These are investments into our community. These are investments in terms of our future and our kids and grandkids. So these are the things that a governing body should be doing, is setting a vision and meeting those goals, ambitious or not. We need to make sure that we preserve Columbia and preserve our future.
We'll start with Greg Bush on this one. What will you concentrate on first upon taking office if you're elected to the 5th ward seat?
Learning. I will absolutely 100% concentrate on learning. There are so many bright, brilliant, effective individuals from university to local activists to people who have had experience in governance. These are the people that are going to be shaping our future. And it is the job of the council person to listen to those individuals that are experts, and then also balance that with the stakeholders for creating a more positive future. So I will be learning. A know-it-all would say they have all the answers. Contrary to what my teenagers say, I am not a know-it-all, and I will continue to learn.
And Don Waterman, what will you concentrate on first upon taking office?
I'll have to second part of what Greg said, and that's learning, because there is so much involved, so much minutia that the city council has to deal with. So many of the issues we're learning, kind of drinking from the fire hose as we go to these different forums, touch on the different issues. Sure, we've got the broad strokes to begin with, the infrastructure crash, whatever. But to get into the details of it and the minutia. So learning what the specifics of the issues, and then looking and talking with what are some solutions. Let's talk to, again, I want to talk to the experts. Okay. The people that have, if we're talking business, I want to talk to the people that have built and created businesses here in town. What's worked for them, what has been some of the roadblocks that they've had to deal with. So how can we open those up? Again, I firmly believe that one of the key aspects of Columbia is economic growth lifts all boats.
We have 2 questions that have been submitted from those that are here at the library, and 2 on the now 3 online. We'll do the best we can. I have to make sure that we end at an appropriate time so that the library doesn't close with us in it. Don Waterman, this is for you, and I'm going to shorten this question just a bit. Our local police department has been embroiled in several incidents, including multiple police-involved shootings. What will you do to hold the police accountable?
I think that, one, I want to see the investigations. I want to see them finished. And I want to see what the results of the investigations are. I know one of the most recent ones, the Highway Patrol is investigating, but I want to see what those are. in talking with the police department, when we went through the process of seeking their endorsement, they don't have an issue with oversight. I think what they have an issue with, if I can quote them correctly, is a review board or an oversight board that doesn't have any limits on the board. I would like to see if the internal investigation or the highway department, highway patrol department investigation comes up with something that is not believed, if you will, then an arbitration as far as to what the appropriate discipline would be in the event of police misconduct.
Okay, Greg Bush, same question. Local police embroiled in several incidents, including multiple police involved shootings. What would you do to hold police accountable?
I'm an RN. And there's a state board of nursing that holds my license, that makes sure that I am doing the right things by the patient, make sure that it's evidence-based practice. That state board of nursing can revoke, suspend, put prohibitions on my license. My license to do things that other people can't do, administer medications, draw blood, is a precious thing to me. Every quarter, I get a newsletter from the State Board of Nursing saying, these are the sanctions upon nurses. My colleagues, they hold nursing to a high standard. They are there to protect the integrity of nursing. And if there is a board that is holding law enforcement to account for the state of making sure that law enforcement has integrity, I haven't seen evidence.
This question, we'll start with Greg Bush on this. Once we've settled the roll cart issues, how will you promote a reduction in plastic consumption and more effective recycling in our community?
So education is an important part of that, making sure that we educate our population of what is recyclable and what is not. Right now, I think it's about 7% of solid waste is able to be recycled. Is being recycled. And I think that we can do better. I think that there is composting that can be done as well. That can be something that happens locally and not go to a landfill. I think that we can incentivize, again, like working with our local grocers, making sure that we bring our own bags back. But that was a hard thing during COVID, is that we couldn't bring our bags into the stores. We always had to leave with, fresh petroleum products. That was difficult for me. Petroleum products meaning plastic bags. So I think that's one thing, is really educating our citizens, because our citizens really do want to do the right thing.
And the question now for Mr. Waterman on, we've settled the roll cart issue. So how are you going to promote a reduction in plastic consumption and more effective recycling?
Again, I'm going to have to agree with Greg. I think a large part of it is going to be education. We need to educate the consumer as to, again, what's recyclable, what's not recyclable. And then the other thing that we could, as a start, go back to weekly recycling collection. Dropped it down to bi-weekly as part of, with COVID, the changes to the trash. We go back to weekly collection. The recycling centers we have around town, I think they do, I'm not sure what the exact schedule is, but I know that frequently if I've got large boxes or something and I want to take it down, about half the time I wind up bringing them home, because the one that's nearest to me is, I'm not going to just throw it on the ground. So I bring it back home and wait till next time. But so encouraging people, informing people as to what's recyclable, encouraging them, yes, to use the reusable bags, reusable drinking containers. All of those items are what is going to take a significant step forward.
We'll start with Donald Waterman on this one. We've had serious issues with our city solid waste. We're now also hearing that water testing hasn't been done. Our electric utility is falling far behind in keeping up with demand due to inaction in planning. This question comes from a participant on Zoom. We're looking at increased rates for all three. All of these have occurred under one director of utilities. How will you hold city staff accountable?
Well, I think this is a good start. We bring it to light. The issue that just came up about the missing testing. I'm not sure exactly what the issue is, where it broke down. But yeah, my solution, let's get it fixed, let's get the testing caught up, and then we'll look and say, okay, where did this process break down? Same thing with the other with sewage, water treatment plants, but it's holding the city employees via the city manager accountable. Making sure that, that's part of, what, if we have to get into the minutia of their performance reviews, then, these projects and plans, when they go forward or when they're set up and structured, making sure that the appropriate city officials are making them move forward and staying within the compliance that we need.
All right, Greg Bush, the same question. I have to do the question again here. Okay. We have serious issues with our city solid waste. We're now also hearing the water testing hasn't been done. Our electric utility has fallen far behind in keeping up with demand due to inaction in planning. We're looking at increased rates for all three. All of these have occurred under one director of utilities. How will you hold city staff accountable?
So city council can hold city staff accountable through the city manager's office, through the city attorney's office. That is how we can hold them accountable. Once we're, should I have the good fortune of becoming the Ward 5 council person, that I can't really interact with city staff in the same way. The only city staff member that I can really speak to is the city manager. So how to hold them accountable? I think the first step is actually conducting a real review of the city manager's office that has not been done for years. Understanding, setting reasonable, measurable goals to make sure that the basic foundations of our civilization, such as not only the earth, but also light, water, city streets, our civic infrastructures are maintained by highly trained, compensated professionals. That is.
I'm going to have to ask you to be really quick on this. And the only reason I'm doing this is because this one was really prepared ahead of time. It's typed out. So I want to do this. The loss of affordable housing in Columbia, and Greg Bush, you start with this one. Loss of affordable housing in Columbia partly attributable to investors converting homes to non-owner occupied short-term rentals offered on Airbnb. This is happening across the city, especially in First Ward. In response to this drain on affordable housing, the Planning and Zoning Commission has drafted a proposed ordinance modifying the UDC that would impose certain regulations on short-term rentals. The real estate community and many short-term rental investors oppose this ordinance. What is your position on it?
Well, I'm sure they would. Investors would not want that kind of ordinance. There is an artificial scarcity of housing in our community. And that artificial scarcity, it was in just, I think 3 weeks ago, it was an NBC News article respect to that in some metropolitan areas, 1 in 5, 20% of the housing is used and is a non-owner occupant. So these investors could be from anywhere. They don't have to be local. They can be somewhere else. And because Columbia is such an attractive place for these people, for these investors, they are extracting the wealth and sending it out elsewhere. I want to keep our economy local. I want to keep our economy vibrant. And I don't want to see our town, trashed for profit by people who don't have any roots here. My last name pun notwithstanding.
Don Waterman, the same question to you. It has to do with Airbnb, short-term rentals. I think you understand what the question is and the impact on affordable housing and the ordinance by the idea from the Planning and Zoning Commission, that proposed ordinance to modify the UDC that would impose certain regulations on short-term rentals. Your thoughts?
I think the proposal actually goes a little too far. And I think it's like I've said, let's try to find that middle ground. The investors are there because they want to try and make their money grow. The property tax, they own it, they pay property taxes here. So that's a good thing for us, we get those property taxes. the revenue that is derived from people that come in, similar to people staying at hotels. We don't have a lot of hotel room right now. So again, it's a compromise. I understand that we don't want to have that completely taken out of the housing market for local housing. Yeah, not sure of an exact answer, but that's part of it. The other part of it, as we build, there's a provision in the zoning for what they call cottage housing. Instead of what I call 3-2, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, the 2-1, 2-bedroom, 1-bath. What that allows is a more concentration, a more concentrated housing, so we can get more people in the same housing area, and it's a lower cost.
Time for closing statements, and we start with Greg Bush, a 60-second closer.
Thank you, David. Thank you to League of Women Voters, who really are the guardians of democracy, and the Daniel Boone Library as a temple of the First Amendment, really. It is. Yeah. Columbia invested in me when I moved here and bought my very first home. And that's the promise of Columbia, as I see it, a Columbia that invests in people. So what did Columbia get with their investment? They got a skilled, highly trained nurse. They got somebody who has finally gotten the time to give back to the city to which I've chosen to live here and raise my family. I believe in Columbia. I believe in my neighbors. I believe in my community. Tomorrow is the last day to register to vote, and I hope that you vote for me should you happen to register tomorrow, April 4th. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg Bush. Donald Waterman, your 60-second closing statement.
Thank you, David, and thank you to the League of Women Voters again for this opportunity. It's been wonderful. Lots of good questions. I too believe in Columbia. I think it's a wonderful community, and I want to see it continue to grow and thrive. I think that, yes, it's given some good things to me. And yes, I'm in a position too now where I can begin to give back to Columbia. So my positions have always been, my number one priority has been fully staffing our first responders, police, fire, EMS, because they all represent the main threads of our society. When people began grouping together into the bands and became communities, one of the reasons was safety, mutual safety. But I also want to see then the infrastructure. We need the roads, we need the water, we need the electrical. I want to see business develop because we need the tax base, which raises everybody, allows for the social services that we all want to see.
Donald Waterman, Greg Bush, thank you both for running for a council seat in Ward 5. An applause for them as we pause for 2 minutes, make the transition, and welcome our final guest of the evening in 2 minutes. Again, we thank those of you who are still with us here in person at the library, and also those who are following our conversation tonight on the April 4th ballot for Columbia and Boone County. Those of you who are watching on Zoom, our final presentations are going to deal with 2 marijuana tax ballot issues. And Columbia Proposition 1 or Prop 1 is for a 3% sales tax on marijuana sales in Columbia. Boone County Prop 1 is for a 3% sales tax on marijuana sales in Boone County. Now, our informational speakers tonight are Andrea Greer, who is Budget Officer for the City of Columbia. She'll speak on Columbia Prop 1, and Kip Kendrick, who is the Boone County Presiding Commissioner, will speak on Prop 1 for the county. We'll have time for questions also from the audience after the presentations. And we'll start with Andrea Greer. Glad that you're here, and we'll hear your presentation now.
Thank you so much. And as I said, my name is Andrea Greer, and I'm the
We're going to
budget
tell you really close to that too.
Sorry about that.
You're good.
My name is Andrea Greer, and I'm the budget officer for the City of Columbia. I'm excited to be here, and I just wanted to clarify one thing, that this is for recreational marijuana use. It does not affect medical marijuana. So if you are holding a medical marijuana card, then the sales tax would not apply to you. So last fall, the state of Missouri, we had a ballot initiative where the state of Missouri citizens voted to legalize recreational marijuana use, and then also have a 6% sales tax assessed on that. What has happened now is that the City of Columbia City Council unanimously voted in January to ask the citizens of Columbia to consider a 6% sales or a 3% sales tax for recreational marijuana for any purchases here in the City of Columbia. The state currently charges 6% sales tax as well. So I think that Kip can also visit about the county, and I believe they're asking for a similar situation. What the City of Columbia would do with those funds is it would go into our general fund, where we are looking for priorities that would focus on public health, social initiative, and then public safety. There haven't been like exact projects yet designated for that, but we do know that those are the priorities that have been set to use those. The City of Columbia is estimating that it would be somewhere between $400,000 and $1 million that it would bring in. It's hard to have that trend and know for sure what those estimates will be because we just haven't had the sales yet in Columbia to be able to accurately decide on what those estimates, what that total would actually do for the sales.
Right, we'll have questions here in just a second.
Okay.
Let's go to Kip Kendrick and hear it from the presentation from the county's point of view on Prop 1.
Yes, so Kip Kendrick, Boone County Presiding Commissioner. So very similarly, the Boone County Commission voted on January 17th of 2023 to place the question before Boone County voters on assessing a 3% sales tax. And so that 3%, that's a cap that is actually built into the Constitution. So the 6% that's collected on top of the addition on the regular base sales tax, 6% addition is collected by the state. And then the constitutional amendment gave the local governments, city, counties, the ability to assess an additional 3% with voter approval. And that's where they had their say, the drafters of the amendment on how it was written on placing a cap on it at 3%, up to 3% sales tax. This money will go to our general funds, but it will be used primarily, specifically upfront. It will be used for to help the county deal with the influx of expungements. So part of that amendment, an important part of that amendment was the expungement process. And oftentimes it's referred to as an automatic expungement. And for the individual, it is automatic. For the court system, is anything but automatic. It's a very detailed process. It's a very complicated process. And when it's a clear, just a marijuana violation, those expungements are not a problem. That's a quick, easy fix that will, quick and easy, I shouldn't say that. The court administrator and judges and clerks would probably have other words to describe that, but it's much easier than if there are multiple charges. And then the further you go back before the automated system was put in statewide, we're going to have to go back in and look at microfilms, and in some cases, maybe even actually open up paper books. And so it is a complicated process. It is an additional workload on a court system that is pretty relatively short-staffed at this point. And so we're going to use those funds to pay overtime and likely hire additional staff to work through those expungements to meet the constitutional deadlines, the best we can meet those constitutional deadlines. The two deadlines that are imposed by the Constitution would be a June 8th for the lesser charges, and then for the more complicated charges of December 8th of 2023 in order to expunge those records.
I have some questions, and then we'll take questions from the Zoom audience or from the audience here. And again, since we're broadcasting on a couple of radio stations live and on Zoom, if you have questions, it'd help if you write them down and one of the members of the League of Women Voters would bring it up. So I'll go to Kip Kendrick first. So what do you estimate? We heard from Andrea Greer with the city, maybe 400,000 to $1 million annually is what you're looking at. Have you run numbers and anticipated what you might fine from the county?
We're estimating anywhere from $40,000 upwards of over $1 million.
All right, that's pretty broad.
It's very broad and it's, I say that halfway joking, but the truth of it is there's going to be likely a legal battle of some sort. And the way we read it, the way the county is reading it right now is we will only be able to collect on sales that happen to dispensaries in unincorporated Boone County. We know that that was the intention of the drafters of the amendment, and the way you read it, it certainly appears that they're not stackable. Department of Revenue, that's a question for the Parks Administration, the Department of Revenue. That is something we will not be able to determine. But we are operating under the assumption that we will only be able to collect currently, I believe, on 2 dispensaries. I know of one. I believe there were 2 in unincorporated Boone County at this point. And so that would put our tax collection at a much lower rate than the city of Columbia.
So if I made a recreational marijuana purchase in the city limits, I would only pay the 3% city tax and not the 3 city and county?
That will be a question for the Department of Revenue and the executive branch.
So when this is voted on, then we won't know?
That is correct. The Department of Revenue has put out 2 conflicting statements at this point, and I think some of us who have put the question on the ballot are wondering why the Department of Revenue even mentioned anything. But they did. They weighed into it and they then reversed course on their first statement very quickly. And then they put out actually a 3rd statement that said, well, we're still not sure what we're talking about. So yes, it will. They initially said it's going to be stackable. And then they said, you know what, it's probably not stackable. And then they said, we're probably going to treat it as stackable, but it probably isn't. So they're still gonna, it's my understanding right now that they're still planning on collecting the 6% if both city and county were to pass it. We would then put it in a special fund, and assuming we would have to send it back once that's ironed out in court.
The other question I have, when people hear the word tax, sometimes their mind immediately just freezes up with the thoughts about what a tax means. This is only going to be paid by those who use recreational marijuana, just to make sure that people are listening to that. I want a question for the city. What kind of feedback have you received or pushback or anything in regard to saying we would put this in general funds with the anticipation of using it for what you outlined a moment ago?
I have not heard of any pushback. I'm not sure if the city council has at this time, or if, other officers within city government have heard anything, but I have not heard anything, especially since it is only going to be affected by, paid by those that actually purchase the product within the city of Columbia. What I've heard from the city council is that their priorities for this year's budget is to focus on social services, public health, public safety. And so this would just help offset some of that and encourage other projects that the general fund might not be able to afford all the way.
Now, for either proposition, would there be a sunset on this, or this is you pass it by a majority vote and it's there until some reason it would change? Correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Any other questions? Sure.
Yeah, I have generally a negative feeling about sales tax, regressive thing. And
Yeah, we'll get this a little bit closer and up here a little bit louder so that the Zoom people can hear it. And I'll repeat it for those of you who need it repeated.
basically, my thoughts are that sales tax is regressive. It hits lower income people more because they, pay more of their earnings on it. And if it is 12%, 6 to the state and 3 to each entity, that's a pretty steep tax. We don't have that on beer or alcohol in general. I think it's being done as a sin tax, but I don't think that smoking marijuana or eating it is sinful. And I just wonder your thoughts on that.
All right, I'll repeat that for anybody who didn't hear that. The question has to do with a tax that is a sales tax on this particular product. And if it is 6%, if it's 9%, if it's 12%, sales taxes generally hit harder on lower income individuals. And the question was put from the point of view is that's not fair. This is not a sin tax. It is a tax that would come down hard on on poor members of the community. So in response to both of you, please. Yep, go ahead
Yeah,
first.
no, I'll be happy to. So the constitutional amendment, as at this point is, I supported, I voted yes on it. I will vote yes on Prop 1, both at the city and county level. And, and I supported the expungement. I thought that was an important step, and especially at the point you legalize, to make sure that you can correct some wrongs and that have been, dealt with in the past. You can correct those. It is an unfunded mandate on the county at this point on processing those, and it is going to stretch the court system, which has to deal with civil litigation and criminal cases. The clerks there in the building who do a phenomenal job. It's going to stretch them very thin to meet this constitutional deadline, but then also to even go back further and wipe some slates clean of marijuana charges. And so we're optimistic that if and when this passes, that we'll use this money appropriately to make sure that we can pay for those, and hopefully that will reduce some people's burdens that, on those fast charges on keeping them from job interviews, or hopefully we can open up more doors for them and get those records expunged in an appropriate manner.
Ms. Greer?
I think the city is looking at it as well as we are looking to use these funds to help perhaps our lower income or underprivileged individuals by increasing public health opportunities, social services, and really looking at how we can fund those items. We are not the only city in the state doing it. Currently, there are over 100 cities that have this ballot initiative on the April ballot. And so that includes Sargent, Centralia, Jefferson City, Hallsville, Ashland, Joplin, Kansas City. That, I think the list just goes on of other communities that are looking to do this. What they are all using their funds for, I'm not aware of it, but I do know that this is something that is widespread across the state.
So is there anything else that we're missing here? I don't have any other questions. I mean, this is currently straightforward, it seems to me. So anything that we're not thinking of today, or that you came prepared perhaps to answer that hasn't been asked? Yep,
So.
very loud.
County is looking at helping with the extra costs for expungement, the legal costs for overtime for the clerks, for the county clerks. There is supposed to be money coming from the state and from the governor, but that hasn't come yet. But what are you looking at in the future? Because, I mean, the city's looking at social services, that expungement, the huge need for overtime will end, and there'll still be tax money.
It will. And, part of the reason why we wanted to put it to general revenues, we didn't want to tie the hands of future commissions, right? And so we fully expect the expungement process to last through the calendar year, which is also our fiscal year and into next fiscal year. So I would expect that we're appropriating the funding for at least FY23 and FY24 towards the expungement process to make sure that we can get all that dealt with appropriately, even potentially go further back in the records than we, are even required by the Constitution to do. Looking, beyond FY25, not for sure, but I would expect that, the county will certainly have needs, and, as we do, just think of the community services department and a cooperation and coordination, the city of Columbia and Boone County. Boone County will soon put out an RFP on a housing study. And so I imagine once we get results of that back, then we will certainly find additional ways to spend money appropriately to address potential needs that are addressed from that study.
I'll make a reaction to one of the Zoom comments from the chat was that just because 100 and some cities in the state are voting on this doesn't make it right for Columbia, but you're just making an objective statement that there are that many cities that are going to be dealing with this issue. I am going to wrap this up, and I just want to say, again, this will be a yes to tax recreational marijuana at a 3% rate in the city of Columbia. If you vote yes on Prop 1, if you vote yes on Prop 1 in the county, but those of us who live in the city, we're going to have both propositions on the ballot. So we vote both of those. If you happen to live outside the city limits, you're only be voting on the county taxing of 3% on recreational marijuana, and whether that would be stacked on top of each other or not, we cannot predict. Kip Kendrick, the presiding commissioner of Boone County, thank you. Andrea Greer, budget office with the city of Columbia, thank you. Let me go through the end of this, the League of Women Voters. Thanks everybody who's participated. Those of you who have been here in person. Thanks to Lauren Williams, also the tech crew here at the library, for KFRU and KOPN for broadcasting the forum. There will be a voter's guide prepared by the League of Women Voters for the April 4th election, and it should be available by March 10th on the website at LWV, which stands for League of Women Voters, CBC, ColumbiaBooneCounty.org. The last day to register, as someone said a moment ago, is tomorrow. No excuse absentee voting will be available March 21st until April 3rd at the Boone County Clerk's office. You need, if you're going to vote that way, an unexpired, or to vote, an unexpired Missouri's driver's license or non-driver's license, unexpired U.S. passport or other federal ID to vote during no excuse absentee voting. If you don't have an acceptable photo ID, you can still vote on election day with a blue provisional ballot. So please vote. Thank you all for being here, and good night.